Did Shedeur Sanders just outmaneuver the NFL before he's even taken a meaningful snap? That's the question quietly floating around league circles right now. Because while most rookies are busy proving they belong, Shedeur may have already proven something else entirely, that the old financial playbook doesn't control him. Reports claim he secured a massive international marketing deal, with numbers floating as high as $50 million. Those figures haven't been fully confirmed and details remain limited, but even the suggestion of a deal that large has raised eyebrows. Not because it breaks rules, it doesn't, but because of what it represents. Draft night told one story, the money might be telling another. Shedeur's slide into the 5th round sparked debate immediately. Analysts questioned everything from his confidence to his system at Colorado. Some fans believed he was undervalued. Others argued teams simply weren't convinced. Either way, a 5th round contract doesn't offer the kind of financial security top prospects expect. But here where things get interesting. Unlike rookies from a decade ago, Shedeur entered the league already experienced in the nil era. He understood branding, he understood leverage, and he understood that quarterback value isn't limited to what happens on Sundays. If the reported international partnership is even close to accurate, it changes the optics. Suddenly, draft position doesn't define power, salary doesn't dictate influence, and financial independence removes a layer of pressure most rookies carry. That's not a loophole, it's adaptation. Some fans believe this could make front offices uncomfortable. Others argue it simply reflects a modern athlete using available opportunities. Either way, it signals something bigger than one endorsement deal. Because if a 5th round quarterback can build global earning power without relying solely on his rookie contract, what does that mean for the league's traditional leverage model? This isn't about rebellion, it's about evolution. And what happened after that draft slide might matter more than where his name was called. No one expected silence to be that loud. When Shedeur Sanders sat in the green room waiting to hear his name called, most analysts had him projected far higher than where he eventually landed. Mock drafts floated him in the early rounds. Pundits debated his upside, his arm talent, his confidence. But as the first night passed, and then the second, the tone shifted. By the time he slid into the 5th round, the conversation wasn't about potential anymore. It was about what went wrong. Some critics pointed to his time at Colorado, questioning whether the system inflated his numbers. Others claimed teams were cautious about the spotlight that follows him not just as a quarterback but as a brand. A few analysts suggested front offices were wary of perceived distractions. None of it was confirmed, but the speculation alone sparked backlash. Fans flooded social media. Some believed he was clearly undervalued. Others argued the league simply didn't see a day one starter, and that divide only intensified once his draft position became official. Here, what made it more controversial? Quarterbacks with similar production profiles had gone earlier in previous drafts. That comparison fueled debate shows for days. Was this purely a football decision, or was something else quietly influencing the board? No team publicly criticized him. No executive admitted hesitation beyond standard scouting language. But the optics were impossible to ignore. A player who commanded national attention in college suddenly found himself waiting far longer than expected. And in the NFL, draft position matters. It impacts contract structure, it influences perceived value, it shapes locker room dynamics. A first-round quarterback walks in with built-in authority. A 5th rounder walks in having to prove everything. That's where the story really begins. Because the slide didn't just affect his paycheck, it changed the narrative surrounding him overnight, from projected franchise piece to developmental project, from spotlight star to question mark. But what many didn't consider at the time was how that slide might shift leverage in a completely different direction. Instead of entering the league desperate to justify his position, Shedeur entered with something different: financial independence from the nil era, a pre-built brand, and an audience that didn't disappear when the draft board moved on. The fall may have altered his rookie contract, but it didn't erase his influence. And what happened after that quiet draft room moment? That's when the conversation truly started evolving. Just when the draft debate started cooling off, another headline reignited everything. Reports began circulating that Shedeur Sanders was connected to a massive international fashion deal, allegedly worth around $80 million, tied to luxury brand Amiri and activity in Paris. The number alone was enough to send social media into overdrive. For a fifth-round quarterback, that kind of figure felt unreal. But here where things get important. There's been no official confirmation, publicly detailing an $80 million guaranteed contract in the way some posts suggested. What's been reported and discussed revolves around endorsement opportunities, international branding campaigns, and long-term fashion partnerships. Some fans believe the deal could be structured over multiple years, performance incentives and brand collaboration elements. Others argue the number may represent projected value rather than immediate payout. That distinction matters. Still, the symbolism was powerful. While critics were dissecting his draft slide, Sanders was being associated with global luxury markets. That contrast raised eyebrows. It fueled a new narrative that even if NFL teams hesitated, the business world clearly didn't. And this is where perception started shifting. For traditionalists, it sparked skepticism. Some questioned whether off-field branding could become a distraction for a young quarterback trying to establish himself. Others pushed back hard, arguing this is simply the modern athlete, especially in the nil era, understanding leverage and market value beyond a rookie contract. The timing made it even louder. An unexpected draft fall followed by international fashion headlines created a dramatic storyline. Was he undervalued by football executives but overvalued by marketers, or were teams underestimating the cultural power he brings? No one inside league offices has publicly tied his draft position to endorsement concerns. But some fans speculate privately that image, spotlight, and media attention can complicate evaluations, especially for franchises that prioritize low-profile development. On the flip side, supporters argue that financial independence actually reduces pressure. If a rookie isn't playing for survival money, he can focus purely on performance. That angle quietly gained traction. What's undeniable is this: the deal, confirmed details or not, elevated his profile internationally. It positioned him as more than just a developmental quarterback. It turned him into a global brand conversation. And in a league that increasingly blends sports, culture, and entertainment, that kind of visibility can be either an asset or a lightning rod. But here's the twist: the real tension wasn't about money. It was about respect. Then came the word that changed the tone of the conversation overnight: loophole. Almost instantly, social media lit up with claims that Shedeur Sanders had somehow outplayed the system. Some fans argued that while NFL teams let him slide on draft night, he found another route to elite-level money and global exposure. The narrative was simple: the league hesitated and he pivoted. But that version of the story doesn't tell the whole picture. There is no verified evidence that Sanders exploited any official NFL draft loophole. Rookie contracts are structured under the league's collective bargaining agreement. Draft position determines base salary, signing bonus, and contract length. That system is rigid. It doesn't leave room for creative maneuvering within team negotiations. So where did this loophole idea even come from? It appears to stem from the modern nil and endorsement landscape. Unlike previous generations, today's players build brand equity before stepping onto an NFL field. By the time Sanders entered the draft, he already had national visibility, sponsorship relationships, and media attention shaped in part by his time under Deion Sanders at Colorado Buffaloes. Some fans believe that brand strength created financial flexibility that made draft position less damaging. Others argue that it proves the NFL's evaluation system doesn't fully account for cultural impact. But again, that's speculation. There's no indication that league officials were outsmarted. Teams evaluate tape, interviews, scheme fit, and long-term development projections. Financial endorsements operate in a separate ecosystem entirely. What made the narrative explode was timing. An unexpected draft fall followed by headlines about international deals and high-value partnerships created a dramatic contrast. It looked like a chess move, even if it was. And perception in the NFL world matters almost as much as performance. Critics questioned whether outside business ventures could become distractions. Supporters countered that financial independence removes pressure and allows a quarterback to focus purely on football growth. That debate hasn't fully cooled off. The bigger truth: This isn't about bending rules, it's about evolving leverage. The modern quarterback enters the league not just as an athlete but as a media entity. That shift feels uncomfortable to some front offices and completely normal to younger fans, and that generational gap is driving a lot of the noise. So no, there wasn't a hidden draft trick. But there was a lesson. In today's NFL, power doesn't only come from draft status. It comes from platform, visibility, and timing. And whether that benefits Sanders long-term will depend on one thing that endorsements can't control. What happens when he finally takes the field? And this is where things started to feel uncomfortable. The moment Shedeur Sanders' name became connected to the Cleveland Browns, the conversation shifted from hype to hierarchy. Because Cleveland wasn't just adding a rookie, they were stepping into a quarterback situation that was already complicated. At the center of it all, Deshaun Watson. Watson's fully guaranteed contract has hovered over the franchise for years. Injuries, inconsistency, and heavy scrutiny have kept the Browns in a constant state of wait and see. When a high-profile rookie enters that environment, it naturally raises eyebrows. Some fans believe Cleveland simply wanted depth and future security. Others argue the move signaled quiet concern about Watson's long-term stability. The front office hasn't publicly framed it as competition, but perception doesn't need confirmation to grow. That's when the locker room questions began. Reports haven't confirmed internal conflict. However, analysts openly debated whether bringing in a media-savvy rookie with national attention could create subtle pressure. Quarterback rooms are delicate ecosystems. Leadership dynamics matter, confidence matters even more. And Sanders doesn't arrive quietly. His brand, his following, and his outspoken confidence make him impossible to ignore. For veterans trying to stabilize a season, that kind of spotlight can feel like fuel or friction. Then there's the coaching factor. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has built his system on structure and timing. He's navigated quarterback changes before, but this situation feels different. The expectations aren't just about wins, they're about direction. Some fans believe Stefanski is protecting Watson publicly while privately preparing alternatives. Others think that narrative is exaggerated and that Sanders is simply developmental insurance. At this point, both interpretations remain speculative. But here's what isn't speculation. Fan energy shifted fast. Social media debates turned into side-by-side comparisons. Practice clips were analyzed like playoff snaps. Even routine throws sparked commentary. That kind of scrutiny can create invisible tension. And that's when the conversation quietly changed. It stopped being about potential, it became about timing. If Watson struggles early, the calls will grow louder. If Sanders flashes in preseason, headlines will escalate. Cleveland may insist there's no quarterback controversy. But in the NFL, controversy doesn't wait for permission. The Browns didn't just add talent. They added intrigue. And whether that becomes internal motivation or external pressure will define how this chapter unfolds. And this is where the bigger shift becomes impossible to ignore. Shedeur Sanders doesn't just represent a quarterback prospect. He represents a new era of football power, an era shaped by nil deals, branding leverage, and athlete autonomy. And when that generation steps into the NFL, it doesn't quietly blend in. Under the NCAA's name, image, and likeness policy, top college athletes began building personal brands before ever taking a professional snap. Sanders was one of the most visible faces of that movement during his time at University of Colorado Boulder, playing under the spotlight created by his father, Deion Sanders. That exposure changed expectations. Unlike previous rookies who entered the league trying to earn their voice, this generation arrives already established, already marketable, already followed by millions, and that dynamic subtly reshapes locker room chemistry. Veteran players built their reputations the traditional way, grinding through obscurity. Proving themselves on Sundays, now they share space with rookies who have signed endorsement deals before signing rookie contracts. Some fans believe this evolution empowers athletes, others argue it disrupts traditional hierarchies. The truth likely sits somewhere in the middle, but what's undeniable is the perception shift. When Sanders steps into an NFL facility, he's not just competing for snaps, he's stepping in as a brand. And that reality sparked debate across analyst circles. Is this confidence or entitlement? Is it preparation for modern football or pressure disguised as opportunity? Those questions aren't accusations. They're reflections of a league adjusting in real time. Because the NFL has always valued production over personality, yet the modern media landscape thrives on personality. And that's where tension quietly forms. Coaches now manage not only talent development but narrative control. Front offices evaluate not only mechanics and decision-making but marketability and spotlight tolerance. For some franchises, that's an asset. For others, it's an adjustment. Reports haven't indicated internal issues, but league insiders acknowledge the broader cultural shift. Rookie contracts are structured the same, expectations are not. This isn't about Sanders alone. It's about the arrival of the nil generation into a league built on veteran authority. And what happens next will test more than arm strength. It will test how tradition adapts to visibility. Because once branding enters the building, the old rules don't disappear. They just get rewritten. The conversation surrounding Shedeur Sanders isn't just about contracts or branding. It's also about optics, particularly when discussions involve Middle East expansion and global partnerships. For years, the NFL has explored opportunities to grow the game internationally. The league has successfully staged games in London and Germany, and there has been ongoing speculation about expanding into new regions. Markets in the Middle East, including cities like Dubai and Riyadh, are frequently mentioned in broader sports investment conversations. Large sovereign wealth funds, including Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, have invested heavily in global sports properties, from golf to soccer, signaling serious interest in international expansion. However, any individual player partnership in that region carries layers of complexity. First, there's the business side. International brand ambassadorships can be legally structured outside league-level agreements, depending on contract language and endorsement categories. Athletes, particularly high-profile ones, often pursue global deals that align with their brand identity and long-term strategy. In today's sports economy, global markets are not optional, they are essential growth engines. But then there's perception. When a young quarterback becomes linked to Middle East sports investment narratives, public reaction tends to split. Some fans view it as smart global positioning. Others immediately frame it within larger geopolitical debates. That's not unique to football. We've seen similar discussions around soccer clubs, boxing events, and golf tournaments. For the NFL, optics matter. The league has spent decades cultivating a carefully controlled image around partnerships and international growth. Official expansions require owner approval, strategic alignment, and extensive media planning. When players independently pursue global visibility, it shifts who controls the narrative. And narrative control is currency in modern sports. This doesn't automatically signal conflict, it signals evolution. Players today operate as independent brands within league ecosystems. Social media gives them direct access to global audiences without relying solely on league platforms. From a franchise standpoint, particularly one like the Cleveland Browns, the focus remains football performance. Front offices prioritize on-field production, leadership presence, and locker room cohesion. Off-field partnerships become secondary unless they create distraction. So far, there is no confirmed evidence of league intervention or emergency action tied to any specific deal. Much of the conversation exists in speculation and commentary spaces. What's real, though, is the broader shift. International capital is reshaping sports. Athletes are becoming global ambassadors earlier in their careers, and leagues are adapting in real time to a world where control is more distributed. Middle East expansion discussions are not just about geography. They're about influence, branding power, and who defines the future of professional football. And that conversation is only beginning. The timing raised eyebrows. Not the contract rumors, not the speculation about international interest. The timing, Shedeur Sanders choosing his birthday to make a major announcement wasn't random, it was calculated. In today's NFL media cycle, timing is leverage. Players don't just compete on Sundays anymore. They compete for attention. Control of narrative matters almost as much as performance. And when Shedeur dropped news tied to his brand on a day already centered around him, it shifted the spotlight entirely in his favor. Birthdays are personal, emotional, celebratory, fans engage differently, social feeds light up, teammates post tributes, media outlets run features. It's organic visibility, so attaching a major business move to that moment, that's strategy. Some fans believe it was subtle revenge for draft night narratives that questioned his stock. Others think it was simply smart marketing from a quarterback who understands branding at a different level. There's no confirmed statement framing it as retaliation, but perception fuels conversation, and conversation fuels relevance. And relevance is power. Shedeur has grown up around cameras, around messaging, around understanding how headlines form. Being the son of Deion Sanders means learning early that public moments aren't accidental. They're orchestrated. That doesn't make them fake, it makes them intentional. Instead of waiting for a leg-driven media window, he created his own. That's a shift from traditional rookie behavior. Most first-year quarterbacks focus on staying quiet, earning respect, blending in. Shedeur leans into visibility, confidently, publicly, without apology. But here where it gets interesting. The NFL thrives on controlling its calendar, draft night, schedule, release, training camp storylines. When a rookie quarterback commands a major news cycle on his own terms, it subtly challenges that structure. Not aggressively, not illegally, just strategically. And what happened next caught everyone off guard. Instead of backlash dominating the narrative, debate did. Some praised the confidence, others questioned the optics. Analysts dissected the timing, social media exploded with theories. That division actually amplified the moment. Because whether fans supported it or criticized it, they were talking about him. And in modern sports, silence is far more dangerous than controversy. The birthday announcement wasn't just about money or contracts. It was about message control. It signaled that Shedeur doesn't plan to wait for validation from draft position, from media approval, or from internal quarterback hierarchies. He understands something many young players take years to realize: attention is currency. And when you control when and how it's spent, you control far more than just headlines. The real question now isn't why he chose that day. It's whether other players start copying the blueprint. This isn't a revolution. It just feels like one. When Shedeur Sanders stepped into the league, most people expected the usual rookie storyline: earn respect, stay quiet, fight for snaps, follow the script. Instead, the conversation shifted almost immediately. Not because of a 400-yard game, not because of a playoff run, but because of leverage. And that's what this entire situation represents: leverage. For decades, the NFL has operated as the central power structure. Contracts, endorsements, media access, exposure, it all flowed through the shield. If you wanted generational wealth, you needed the league. That was the understanding. But the landscape has changed. Name, image, and likeness deals reshaped college football. Social media gave players direct pipelines to millions of fans. Global markets opened doors the league doesn't fully control. None of this happened overnight. It's been building quietly for years. Shedeur just happens to be one of the first young quarterbacks to fully step into that new reality without hesitation. Some fans believe he's challenging the system. Others think he's simply maximizing opportunities within it. The truth likely sits somewhere in the middle. There's no confirmed rebellion, no official standoff, just a player using the tools available to him. And that's what makes this different. He didn't break rules, he didn't attack the league publicly, he didn't demand changes, he moved strategically, legally, confidently. That's not a revolution. That's evolution. But evolution can still make powerful people uncomfortable. If players prove they can build wealth and influence independently of team contracts, negotiations feel different, fines feel different, public pressure feels different. When financial dependence decreases, organizational leverage naturally shifts. And that's where the quiet tension lies. Not in press conferences, not in official statements, but in boardrooms and agent calls and contract language reviews. This isn't about one quarterback overthrowing a billion-dollar machine. It's about a subtle redistribution of influence, a reminder that today's athletes are brands, businesses, and global figures before they ever take their first professional snap. The NFL isn't losing control overnight. The structure is still strong. The league still dominates American sports. But the balance, it's adjusting. And maybe that's the real takeaway. Not that Shedeur started a rebellion. Not that owners are panicking. But that the modern NFL player no longer fits the old blueprint. The power hasn't flipped. It's just no longer one-sided. And if this is only the beginning, the next few seasons won't just define careers, they'll quietly define how much control the league truly holds in a new era of athlete independence.